Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Let's go ahead and talk about what my reading plans are for the month of July. And I'll go ahead and start by mentioning the books that I'm going to be carrying over from June. First of all, that will be Memories of Ice, book 3 of Malazan Book of the Fallen. I'm sitting pretty close to the 50% way mark here, so that means I read about 40% in June. This is a lot for a book. There is so much going on. I feel like I'll spend some time reading it, and the amount of things that are happening in this book are the same amount that happens in an entire novel from a different author. So I will say I have thankfully been enjoying this, especially much more than my Dead House Gates experience. But it is kind of a book there. I want to read it and I kind of want to binge it, but at the same time I feel like so much is happening that I need to take some breaks from it. So I'm actually going to be continuing over a book I started in between this, and that is The Master of White Storm by Janny Wurts. This is one of her standalone novels. I think it's lesser known than To Ride Hell's Chasm. I'm about 10% of the way into this book, and so far it is pretty interesting. It's good. I haven't really got to the crux of the story yet or anything, but it's just nice to be back reading a Janny Wurts book. It's been a little while now since I finished book 3 of her big series, Wars of Light and Shadow, and she's just an author that I really enjoy, and I'm glad to be back to her world. I'm also considering starting one of her, she has another trilogy, I forget exactly what it's called, but I think the first book is called Storm Warden or something like that, and so I'm also looking forward to maybe getting to that before I even get back to Wars of Light and Shadow, just because reading that and Malazan at the same time seems to be hard. I'm not sure. One of my lovely subscribers gave me book 4, so I do very much want to read it, but that starts a new arc. That series is kind of broken up into arcs, and I'm not sure I'm ready to do that and Malazan at the same time, because it is definitely a heavy read for sure. But that is all the old stuff, and now let's talk about some new stuff that I will be reading this month. And I don't have as solid of a plan as I would normally like. So these 3 I think are pretty solid, and then I have a couple other books that are kind of up for debate. And the first one will be a new release from Will White, and that is called The Night. This is book 3 of his Last Horizon series. So obviously he's very known for his Cradle series. I haven't read Cradle, but this is the 3rd book in this series, and I have very much enjoyed it so far. I really liked book 2. I thought book 2 was a lot of fun, and this series in general is just a lot of fun. It's not like a super deep series. It is kind of a popcorn read is what I like to call it, but I have a good time with it. It's fun, it's light, it doesn't use 110% of my brain power, and I can just kind of sit back and enjoy it as we go through it. So we'll see how this one goes. I have heard from, or I saw a review from Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews that he did not like this one as much as the other ones, and he liked the first 2 books more than I did. So either I'm going to like this one more than he did, or I'm going to like it even less than he did. So that will be interesting to see how that one goes. Next up is Jerusalem Fire. And if you remember my June TBR, this is by J.M. Mulch. This was originally in my plans for June, and I just don't think I'm going to get around to it. Memories of Ice took me way longer to read. And I don't want to say it put me in a reading slump, but it definitely made it difficult for me to read other things. So this is kind of getting bumped this month, but I didn't start it, so I'm not counting it as a carryover. This is a book that Janny Wurts read and recommended that people should read. This is kind of one of, I think she referred to it as like a forgotten author, somebody who's very talented, but just doesn't get the notoriety that she thinks that they deserve. So when she was talking that highly about this author, it is somebody that I wanted to pick up, and it has a interesting premise. It's a sci-fi book, so one of my goals this year was to read some more sci-fi, so it's checking off a couple of different boxes there. And then the last one that I am pretty solid on reading is going to be Neon Ghost by Daniel Green. I finally got the Kickstarter edition. One of the most beautiful books I own. I love this cover. I don't know why. I just really like the colors and everything, so I think this is a super beautiful book, and now that I finally got it, I'm going to go ahead and get around to finally reading it, because I think the audiobook and stuff has been out for a while, but now that this edition finally came in and I got it, I'm going to go ahead and finally get around to reading it. I have read the other stuff that Daniel has published, so that's what, Rebel's Creed and Breach of Peace. I thought Breach of Peace, I thought they were both fine. I didn't love either of them, but I thought they were pretty good, and I'm curious to see, he's pretty open with his author journey and how he's trying to progress as a writer and everything. So I'm pretty curious to see any advancements I see in him as a storyteller. So very much looking forward to getting to that soon. And then, like I was saying, that's really my only kind of solid plans, and even those I'm feeling a little wishy-washy on this month, which isn't that normal for me. Normally I can kind of pick out exactly what I'm going to read, but I do have some maybes. So I do own Malice by John Gwynne. I kind of want to read that before I get to the final book in the Bloodsworn saga, so maybe that is definitely an option. I am a little nervous about starting another series right now because I'm reading so much stuff, but it's one of those series that I hear some people talk so highly of, and I own it already, already, so I kind of want to get around to it at some point. This has been my maybe for probably longer than any other book I've been talking about in my TBRs recently, and that is Starship Troopers by Heinlein. And this is another one of those books that I just kind of want to get to at some point. I want to watch the movie again, and I think I saw it when I was like way too young, like super little kid. I think I have some like very vague memories of it. Not enough to even know anything about the story, but I don't think I've really read anything else by him, so I want to get around to experiencing him as an author. And this book I feel like gets talked about more often than it probably should, or it just has like a lot of notoriety, so I want to get around to it at some point. And then my last maybe is actually a bunch of maybes, but I'll probably try to throw in something from Stephen King this year. I have really been enjoying getting to read a lot of Stephen King stuff. I've read 4 of his books this year, 5 overall, and yeah, I mean his most recent book I read is a new all-time favorite. He's just an author I have really been clicking with. I've been reading kind of like his big stories, that ones that everybody knows and loves. So I'm very much looking forward to maybe exploring another book from him. I'm kind of leaning towards, I think technically he wrote this under his synonym originally, but his synonym, his other name, I can't remember the word right now. My brain is a little fried, but he wrote this as Bachman. I think it was his other name, right? Richard Bachman was his other pseudonym. There we go. His pseudonym was Richard Bachman. I think originally The Long Walk was written under that name, but it's a shorter book, and it seems to be kind of polarizing. I see some people in the Kingverse really like it and others not so much, so it's kind of one that I'm interested in getting to. I would love to get to 11/22/63, but I think it's just too long, and I won't be able to fit it in, especially with Memories of Ice still kind of on the docket. I just don't have time for that, and I'm saving The Shining for not the summertime because people recommended me that it's apparently a pretty good winter read. Not that that's something I normally care about, but I like to listen to what other people have to say. If you're gonna spend time commenting, I'm gonna take in what you say into consideration. So if you have any other King recommendations, I have read It, Salem's Lot, Cujo, Pet Sematary, and I can't remember the last one for some reason, but it was another big hitter. So if you have some maybe ones that are not the top of his list, but you think that I should get around to reading sooner than later, definitely let me know down below in the comments. Let me know what your plans are for July. I know a lot of people end up having vacations and time off from work and everything, so July for me normally isn't the best reading month. I'm curious on if that's the case for you and what you'll be reading. So that's all for me, and as always, have a good one.